My parents gave me 1 hour to leave the house when my brother set me up. Now my mom messages nonstop, asking for saving my brother from jail. Hello Reddit. I've been putting this off for a long time, but I thought it was appropriate to share after a recent conversation. This is how my brother destroyed my life, how my parents picked him over me, and how karma ultimately got the better of me. My family appeared normal from the outside when I was growing up. Middle class, 2 parents, a suburban residence, as usual. On the inside, however, it was a whole other matter. Since I was the eldest son, I was inevitably expected to be the responsible one, the decent kid, and the role model. And I was for the most part. I had good grades. I worked really hard, but I wasn't a genius. I was never in trouble. Nothing. No clashes, no detentions. I helped out around the house with everything from dishes to garbage removal, to watching my younger brother. Then there was Alex. My age was 2 years older than Alex's. And he had somehow learned the skill of manipulation, even as a child. This child could get away with lying about anything. Did he break anything? I was to blame. Was he caught slinking away? He would tell Mom that I made him fill in for me. Did he flunk an exam? Alex took my attention away from my studies. And they believed him each and every time. I used to believe that they were just kinder to him because he was the youngest. But as time went on, I understood that Alex was simply their favorite. What I did didn't matter. Even if he was a careless little snot and I was the ideal son, I was always expected to perform better. Not only did they think he was superior to me, but they also believed him to be so. We were constantly compared by Mom. Why can't you be more like Alex? Yes, Mom. He is a pathological liar in addition to being incredibly amiable and charming. What about Dad? He remained silent. However, whenever he did, it was always frustrating to me. You're older. You ought to be more responsible. Do you imply that I should just let him bully me? They had more than one favorite in Alex. He could not be touched. The pivotal moment. I had given up on attempting to win their approval by the time I turned 16. I wasn't disobedient in any way. I simply gave up trying. Gave up hoping they would hear my side of the story. And gave up on ever having a fair chance. Ceased to think that I would ever be sufficient, regardless of what I did. I became reticent. To reduce the amount of time I had to spend at home, I took a part-time job after school. I spent more time at the library, either reading for pleasure or studying. What about Alex? He was having a good time. Leaving covertly at night. Returning home intoxicated or high. Stealing cash from my room, Dad's wallet, and Mom's pocketbook. Spending time with the most repulsive individuals. Naturally, though, none of that was an issue, since Alex was the favored child. And me? I was merely used as a scapegoat. Furthermore, I was unaware of how bad things were going to get, despite my belief that I could manage it. The lie that destroyed everything is up next. The deception that ruined everything. I had become accustomed to taking the blame for stuff I didn't do by the time I was 16. At that time, it was simply a fact of life. Alex suffers when Alex makes a mistake. Alex was the negative influence, and Alex was caught. Does Alex require a scapegoat? There's Alex. Even much I detested it, I had adapted to live with it, until Alex did something so horrible and inexcusable that it ruined my life. The ideal crime. For months, Alex had been stealing. Initially, he would steal minor items from stores, take money from Mom's pocketbook, and swipe cash from Dad's wallet in an attempt to get away with it. Then he became arrogant. He became friends with some of the older children. True scumbags. They forced him into more dangerous occupations, such as car breaking, pickpocketing, and theft. Then they broke into the home of a neighbor. I was not involved in it. When it occurred, I wasn't even at home. But guess who was held accountable when the police arrived at our door? Framing me for a crime I didn't commit as Alex's masterwork. That day, I felt something wasn't right as I walked in from school. Sitting in the living room were Mom and Dad. Mom seems to have shed a tear or two. Dad's jaw was clenched and his arms were crossed. What about Alex? Alex appeared to be the victim as he sat there, looking little and afraid. Dad threw my backpack to the ground at that point. Alex, what the devil is this? I took up my backpack and opened it, looking down in confusion. I felt sick to my stomach. Cash remaining in an envelope, a pair of watches, and a gold bracelet were found inside. My heart was racing when I gazed up at them. What on earth is this? I don't own this. Don't mislead us, Mom cried out. Dad gave a headshake. Today the police arrived. Last night someone broke into Mrs. Turner's home. She claimed to have seen someone moving stealthily. Can you guess who fits the description? I looked across at Alex. He refused to give me a glance. Tell them I didn't do this, Alex. Playing the part of an Oscar-winning actor, he simply gazed at the ground. He muttered, Alex, I saw you sneak out last night. I didn't want to believe it. I considered. Perhaps you were meeting a female, I thought. However, today I discovered this thing in your bag. I was furious and trembling. You're telling lies. Mom broke down in tears. Dad simply gave me the look of someone who doesn't care about me. A criminal was not raised by me. Then came the words that permanently altered my life. Stow your belongings and leave. Discarded as waste. I assumed that they were bluffing and would recognize their error in a few hours. However, no. I had an hour to pack, they said. 1 hour. No inquiries, no trial, no second chances. Alex had a smug little smile on his face as he watched me pack in the hallway. I desired to eject his teeth. However, I was aware that they would actually call the police if I touched him. Mom was still crying when I left the room. Dad didn't even bid us farewell. And Alex, he simply triumphantly stood there. I realized then that I would never be able to return. No place to go. No one to assist. For the first several nights, I slept on a friend's couch. I then began crashing at the rear of the convenience store where I was a part-time employee. Mr. Patel, the proprietor, was a saint. As long as I arrived on time for my shifts and didn't cause any issue, he allowed me to sleep in the storage room. There was nowhere else for me to go. Mom didn't call. Dad never showed up. Alex? He must have been having a great time celebrating his win. And me? I had to learn how to live by myself. The first difficult lesson is that you must preserve yourself. I hoped that they would realize their mistake. My mother would call me crying and ask for forgiveness one day. That my father will come to the realization that he threw away the wrong son. That Alex would make a mistake and people would be able to see him for who he truly was. However, that day never materialized. I saved every dime while working 2 jobs. Additionally, I had saved up enough money to rent a small apartment by the time I was 18. There wasn't much, just a single room with a folding chair and a mattress on the floor. It was mine though. And I gradually began creating a life for myself. A life without them. Next up, the knocking of karma. It never occurred to me that I would hear from them again. However, the truth was eventually revealed years later. Everything changed at that point. I had started my life from scratch by the time I was 18. It wasn't simple. During the day I worked in a warehouse, and at night I worked at a gas station. The only furniture I had in my small studio apartment was a folding chair and a mattress on the floor. I had to choose between food and rent on certain evenings, so I went to bed hungry. But what do you know? I owned it. There was nobody for me to answer to. I have no one to control. Nobody holds me accountable for things I didn't do. And I felt free for the first time in ages. However, the universe chose to reveal something lovely to me just when I believed that my past was behind me. Because, guess what? At last Alex was apprehended. And nobody was there to take the fall this time. The golden child's fall. It all began when my aunt called me at random. I nearly dismissed her name when it appeared on my phone because I hadn't spoken to any of my family members since they threw me out. However, my curiosity overcame me. I grabbed it. "You're not going to believe this, Alex," was the first thing she said. Yes. But I did. Since I was well certain that Alex would crash and burn, I simply didn't think it would occur that quickly. Alex had been stealing for years, it turned out. What began as minor shoplifting turned into credit card fraud, identity theft, and even the writing of counterfeit checks. And he was caught red-handed this time. When Alex was arrested, Mom and Dad's idyllic life fell apart. The entire deck of cards fell apart. Mom and Dad were ashamed. Their home was visited by the cops. All of a sudden, everyone in the neighborhood realized that their ideal son was a crook. His lawyer was not inexpensive, as they had to pay for it. Alex was facing real jail time. And you know what? This time, his false tears didn't work. Alex was blameless, for the first time in his life. What about my parents? They had to acknowledge that their destruction of their real son had been pointless. The first interaction in years. My mother sent me a message a week after Alex was arrested. I can still picture my hands shaking as I stared at my phone. It had been years since she had spoken to me. She was now extending her hand. I inhaled deeply before opening it. Mom. Can we talk, Alex? I know it's been a while. Something inside of me told me, no, let's see where this goes, even if I should have disregarded it. So I answered, me. What would you like? And her response, the most predictable garbage ever, huh? We need your assistance. The narrative of the tears. Instead of seeing her at her place, I agreed to meet her at a coffee shop. I had no intention of returning there. She appeared older, exhausted, and quite stressed when she first entered. And what did she do first? She started crying. We made such a mistake, honey, Alex. I took a drink of my coffee. Indeed. She used a napkin to dab at her eyes. Alex came clean about everything. He explained to us how he had lied about everything, including you and the heist. I reclined. And the reason you're here now is... What? Do you want your mess fixed by me? She cast her gaze downward. I'm drowning in legal bills, along with your father. Even though we have loans, they are insufficient. Alex too. He might end up in prison if we don't assist him. I waited for the punchline while I sat there. And indeed it arrived. We were hoping you might be able to lend us some money, Alex, my love. That was it. I was unable to contain myself. I chuckled so loudly that everybody looked at me. I then leaned forward and gave her a direct look. Let me clarify this. You ripped me out of your life, tossed me out when I was 16, and dubbed me a criminal. And you suddenly need me now that your true criminal kid is in trouble? She appeared ashamed. Alex, please. You're his brother. I gave a headshake. You used me as a scapegoat. I am now your fallback option. And Mom, I have something to tell you. I have stepped down from that role, abandoning them to the ruin they made. One final plea was made by her. We risk losing the house if we don't receive the money. I inhaled deeply. I then gave her a direct look and finally uttered what I had been wanting to say for years. I have already assisted you once. It wasn't appreciated by you. I will not repeat that error. I then left. The ultimate result. Alex was arrested. It will only last a few years. However, enough to eventually remove that arrogant expression off his face. The house was lost by Mom and Dad. It turns out that they went broke because they were so preoccupied with protecting Alex's ass. I didn't talk to them again. And me? I continued to construct my life. An actual one. One in which I wasn't someone's backup plan, their punching bag, or their ATM. And I felt calm for the first time in my life. Family, according to some, is forever. But me, family in my opinion, is earned. And I never got my money back from them. I haven't given my family much attention in years. And to be honest, I was better off without them. After severing connections, I concentrated on starting over. I eventually began my own business after moving to a larger city and working extremely hard. Just a little contracting business, nothing special. I created something I was proud of, compensated my employees well, and employed decent people. What about my family? I had no idea where they were. I didn't check in. They were never stalked on social media. I was never curious about their well-being. To me, they were ghosts. Until one of those spirits returned to haunt me one day. The unexpected reunion. It took place on a Tuesday at random. Someone sat down across from me as I was reviewing some invoices at a coffee shop. Already irritated, I looked up. People simply showing up at my table without invitation bothers me. Then I caught sight of his face. Alex. Older. Rougher. Not the same. Gone was his arrogant golden child grin. His previously flawless appearance was worn down and exhausted. His expensive clothing was swapped out for inexpensive items from resale stores. I just stared at him for a moment, trying to comprehend that he was here. Then he grinned as if nothing had occurred. It's been a while, big bro. His narrative of sobbing. I reclined in my seat. I was unaware that we were still referring to one another by that name. As if this were some kind of weird high school reunion, Alex laughed and rubbed the back of his neck. Look, dude, I realize it's been a long time since we spoke. Some time. As if he had completely forgotten that he had gotten me expelled from my own home and framed me for a crime the last time we met. I crossed my arms. Alex, what do you want? He shook his head and moaned. Observe. I made a mistake. I am aware of that. In prison, man, it transformed me. I had time to reflect. To think. Additionally, all I want to do is make things right. I waited for the joke while I looked at him. And indeed, it arrived. I've heard that you now own a business. I hoped you might give me a chance. Assist me in getting back on my feet. I laughed because I couldn't help myself. You want me to hire you? Seriously? Alex put on his most modest expression and nodded. Come on, man, we're brothers. Blood is blood, right? I put down my coffee and gave him a direct look. Blood was never the problem, Alex. It was you. His grin wavered. Come on, man. You can't still be mad about all that old. We were kids. I bent over. You weren't a kid when you stole from Mom. You weren't a kid when you committed fraud. And you sure as hell weren't a kid when you got me thrown out of my own home. Alex's facade of humility faltered a bit. Damn, man. You really just gonna hold a grudge forever? I picked up my coffee and got to my feet. Alex, I don't hold grudges. I just don't make the same mistake twice. I turned to go. He lost his temper at that point. It was the real Alex. You're still a fucking selfish prick, you know that? I halted and pivoted. The phony kind man persona has vanished. The real Alex was there. I knew you'd still be the same arrogant piece of shit. You always thought you were better than me. Always thought you were some saint. I simply gave a headshake. Nah, Alex, I don't think I'm better than you. I just know I'm not stupid enough to trust a thief. He sneered. You, Alex, you think you're some big-shot businessman now? You're just a bitter loser who doesn't know how to let go. With that, he bounded off. No farewell. Thank you for meeting me, but no. Just a grown-up man having a temper tantrum. Alex in his classic form. With a groan, I returned to my seat and grabbed my luggage. I realized then that my wallet was missing. Humans are constant. I went cold. I looked in the chair, my pockets, and beneath the table, but nothing was there. I dashed outdoors and looked around the street. Alex had already left. Then I simply burst out laughing. I'm laughing so hard I can't believe this shit. Because I had a realization at that very instant. Alex remained the same. Not behind bars. Not after all these years. Not after everything was lost. He remained the same jerk that he had always been. And I had almost permitted myself to think that he may be someone else. Fortunately, I never repeat the same error twice. The last farewell. I replaced my wallet, canceled my credit cards, and carried on with my life. Alex never got back to me. Failed to check on him. Didn't question his whereabouts. I was finished. Because of some individuals, they are not worthy of second opportunities. And now, there were no more individuals for Alex to use. Conclusion. It is common to hear the phrase, everyone deserves a second chance. However, I don't think so. Because of some individuals, they'll give it another go. Additionally, when you are handing them your wallet, they will steal it. Too lengthy, failed to read. I was falsely accused of a crime by my brother. I was expelled by my parents. When he was jailed years later, they learned the truth. They pleaded for my assistance. They should fuck off, I said. No regrets. Read it then. Was I too severe? Or did they receive just what they were due? Thanks for watching and diving into this wild family drama with me. If you love Reddit family drama, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss the next one. I quietly left when found out my wife's affair after 3.5 years of marriage. A year later, my ghosted ex-wife tracked me down. After learning of my wife's adultery, I moved to the hills. I'm not sure why I'm writing this, but hopefully it will be useful to someone now that the situation has passed and I've moved on. After 3.5 years of marriage, I discovered my wife's affair in February 2018. I worked a contract job that periodically required extensive travel but also allowed me to work from home when I returned. My wife worked as a director for a technical sales company, which was highly lucrative. Although things had gotten a little strained as she worked longer and longer hours and I traveled for work, we still had what I would consider a fairly good marriage. Background: 5 years ago, during a cookout thrown by a mutual acquaintance, I met my now ex-wife. We hit it off right away once we started conversing. To be honest, I thought being with a lady who was both attractive and articulate was a great advantage. She seemed to like my rough around the edges personality. After a few weeks of dating, we were charmed with each other. When we met at each other's apartments, the clothing just flew off. After 18 months of dating, we married and moved into a spacious apartment while saving for a down payment on a house. Things began to shift after the first 3 years of marriage. Even though I still had affection for her, I noticed that she argued over minor issues. When I mentioned all the late hours and increasingly frequent work outings, she became enraged. Since she was climbing up the corporate ladder, she would explain that it was a necessary component of paying the dues, or so she thought. She told me that since I was also gone for weeks at a time, I had no right to challenge her. In truth, I had only been taking holidays for 3 or 4 days every 5 weeks, so I convinced her that I could easily reduce my trip time. There was no conclusion to these exceedingly circular arguments. Looking back, I realize I was completely oblivious that my wife was having an affair. Aside from our diminishing sexual relationship and her consistent late work hours, I would never have guessed anything. I just figured she was exhausted from her job. But being rejected so frequently when I attempted to initiate a sexual relationship had taken a toll on my ego. Although she had a business phone and may have been using it, I did not see the covert texting that I had read about in other publications. She used our spare bedroom as a home office and spent a lot of time in it. Kathy began returning home after work in September 2017 and instead spent the evening at a work engagement. This rose from 1 night per week to more than 3 evenings each week. Although I'm not inherently envious, she would surely be seen by others, and I'm aware that she would have to avoid some of the males at her workplace. Despite working with more male CEOs than female CEOs, she gave the impression that she was solely interested in her profession. The first time I believe she was cheating was a month before D-Day. She had stopped at the store before returning home. I was asked to help her with the food shopping. As I was getting some belongings from the back seat, I noticed something pink glinting just beneath the front passenger seat of her car. It was my wife's bra. She preferred ones from a specific clothes store, so I knew they were hers. Looking back, I see the bra was a warning sign. When she's feeling particularly amorous, she always takes off her bra first, from underneath her clothes. I'm not sure why, but watching this made me sick to my stomach immediately. I didn't understand why her bra was under the seat. I said nothing more. My heart must have been pounding so hard that I almost passed out, because when I returned the bags to the kitchen, Kathy inquired how I was feeling and claimed I looked like I had seen a ghost. I just ignored her remark. It took everything I had to hide my feelings, but I tried not to appear offended or fooled. I decided to find out if she was seeing anyone that night and the next day. I began to evaluate all of the signals I could have missed. Aside from the bra, I had no evidence. She works in a downtown office building, and we live in a relatively large city. I decided to temporarily put the affair out of my mind and explore giving her more of my time. One Friday evening after work, I prepared a delicious lunch and set the table with elegant plates, silverware, and candles. I bought a bouquet of flowers and a wonderful bottle of wine. When she arrived as normal after work, I showed her the supper and everything I had prepared. She apologized and said she was sorry, but she needed to go to a neighborhood hangout to meet up with her colleagues. She said she needed to take a shower first, but she could have a quick snack with me before leaving. I guess I fell completely silent because my insides turned on me. I won't go into detail about how angry I was at the time, but I'd had enough. I took my work cell phone and dumped it in her back seat while she was showering. I had considered using my own phone to find her. I then went into the kitchen and tossed away the food and flowers. She got ready after showering and looked lovely as usual. "All right, let's eat," she replied. "Never mind, go out with your friends," I told her. She inquired whether I was angry after giving me a strange expression. "I'm sad that you never want to do anything with me," I told you. She became enraged and sarcastically remarked on my short temper, ordering me to quit acting like a child. I said, "Foolish me," as I stood there, allowing everything to sink in. For once, I thought we should spend the evening together. She merely smiled and stormed away. When she left, I grabbed out my second phone and started following my work phone. I caught her stopping about 20 minutes away, at the bar where she frequently meets with her coworkers. I decided to go find her car. Indeed, it was in the bar's parking lot. I waited to see if I could spot her in my car across the street. I felt radically different, like a stalker, but I told myself that I needed to alleviate my anxiety about her location. I saw her leaving the bar with a man approximately an hour after I arrived. He looked like an executive from her company. He grabbed her, dragged her closer, and planted a kiss on her lips. My entire body was numb, and my gut began to clench up. They went to a different vehicle and hopped into it together. When their car pulled away, I attempted to catch up with them. They drove to a hotel about 10 minutes away. As I came to a halt on the street beside the hotel, I noticed them exiting, holding hands, and entering. I had seen enough. I felt ridiculous. I started banging the steering wheel with my fist. That was it. Something went completely blank inside of me. I'm not sure if I had an out-of-body experience or blacked out, but as I recovered, I wanted a drink. At this point, my life took an unexpected turn. I simply started driving out of town, reliving everything I'd just seen. As much as I hate to admit it, I was crying because I was angry. I found a charming little tavern on the outskirts of town, perhaps 30 miles distant, and stopped in. I ordered a drink while sitting at the bar. The bartender, a lady, remarked I looked like someone had taken the wind out of my sails, thus I guess I looked like death had come early. I replied, half smiling. You could say that? A man sat down beside me and started a conversation. Even though I didn't feel like conversing, something about this guy made me feel comfortable. We had a talk, and my wife's adultery came up. I told her all I wanted was to be away from her and forget about her. You are not alone, buddy, he said, giving me a back pat and a short gaze. I went through that a few years ago. I believe there is a reason why these things occur. I guarantee you that your life can now take both positive and terrible turns. At this point, everything is up to you. His words, for some reason, startled me out of my funk. Even though I was aware of my anguish, I've always been able to think clearly, and he was entirely correct. We identified ourselves. Ray was his name. I appreciated his down-to-earth attitude, despite the fact that he was more of a country guy. When are you going to move out? He said. I suppose I never considered looking that far ahead. I had a fight-or-flight reflex going on, and I knew I didn't want to be around this woman anymore. I have an idea and I feel very sympathetic to your situation, Ray informed you. When the time comes, I have a mobile trailer on my property in case you need to go. It may take some tweaking and isn't really good. Why don't you come and see if you can envision yourself short-living in anything like that? I'll give you a great deal on it, at the very least. You could even park it on a beautiful piece of land I own. I would be grateful if you could watch it for me. It may be useful to escape your situation, just a thought. I took a while to grasp his concept. Hell, honey, if I could have escaped my crazy ex-husband years ago, I would have jumped at the chance to live in his trailer or anything just to get my head on straight, said the bartender, who had been listening in on the conversation. Perhaps this was just what I needed, but I felt like I'd stepped into the twilight zone. Yes, I'll think about it and maybe check it out, I said to Ray. After a time, we broke up and planned to meet at his house in a few days. I began to feel as if I had some perspective and a chance to escape what I perceived to be a dreadful heartache paired with a nightmare. I knew one thing for certain, I never, ever wanted to spend time with my wife again. I find cheating abhorrent, and it has always been something I felt I would never tolerate. I sat on the couch when I got home that evening after Kathy. Kathy questioned where I'd been when she came out. Where have you been? I asked, turning to face her. You know, I went to get drinks, she explained. I said directly, are you having an affair? She seemed astonished, but she quickly composed herself and replied, no, why would you ask me that? I told her that I'd heard she might be seeing someone at work. Who told you this? She stated. Someone I know, I said, keeping the name a secret. After repeating, you're being ridiculous, she accused me of intoxication and insanity and inquired about my location. We're going to a bar to enjoy some drinks with our friends, I said. Despite her obvious desire to ask more questions, she returned to our bedroom and retired to bed. Now that I had proof she had been fooling me for months, I decided to sleep on the couch. I couldn't sleep because I kept envisioning her in bed with this man. I felt bad about myself, disgusted, and hurt. But then I thought of Ray's trailer. The concept of that made me happy, and it was almost like a revelation. Something must be wrong with me since the fight-or-flight reaction activated immediately in the midst of my misery, and I chose the flight response. We didn't talk much the next morning and went on with our weekend as if nothing had happened. I set up a meeting with Ray a few days later. When I arrived, I realized that Ray had a beautiful ranch, and the trailer was fairly nice, about 26 feet long and well furnished. It reminded me of a fantastic spring break vacation I took with friends while in college. Ray accepted the money I gave for the trailer. To be honest, I nearly stole it from him. He gave me directions, so I drove over to inspect his ranch property. There were hiking and biking trails nearby, and the scenery was beautiful, with plenty of trees and scrub vegetation. Ray had a little cabin on a hilltop overlooking the property, with electricity and water available for the trailer, and it was at the foothills of some mountains. Ray offered to set up the trailer and transport it to the place. I tried to convince Kathy to come clean over the next few weeks, but all I got was gaslighting. I even told her outright that if I found out she was cheating, there would be no turning back. As a result, she became even more immersed in her affair fog, and began to deny my claims. I almost chuckled at how horrible the denial was. I chastised myself for failing to photograph the two of them, even though I had no real evidence that she had cheated. After experiencing such emotional suffering, I concluded that I wanted to leave this marriage. Instead of articulating my feelings to Kathy, I just started plotting. While she was at work, I quietly began collecting my belongings from the apartment and transferred them to the trailer. At the very least, I felt I was doing something about it. I saw a difference in Kathy during this time. Although she had been nicer to me, I felt it was too little. Too late. I thought I needed a break too, so she continued to go on company outings, after work. One night, I got ready right as she was leaving. After staring at me, she asked about my destination. All I said was, meeting up with some friends. You wouldn't enjoy all the shop talk, and you don't know them, I interrupted her as she continued to ask questions. She used to say exactly this to me whenever I asked if I might accompany her on office trips. All right, have a good time, she said with a somewhat annoyed expression. I definitely will, I said. I met new people while working on the trailer and hanging out with Ray at the bar. I felt better after spending time with Ray's lovely family and friends. I also decided to cut back on my drinking because I did not want to develop any bad habits. I knew better than to drown myself in sympathy, even though it would have been so easy. Kathy informed me that the following week she would be traveling for work. When I asked who was going, she said it was the executive team and a few department heads. I hope you have a great time with your boyfriend, I said, staring at her. I immediately regretted saying that, as it sparked a heated debate. Although Ray had told me that it didn't matter, I now regret not learning more about her affair partner, AP. It doesn't matter who the other guy is, Ray explained. The fact that she chose to leave you is all that matters. She destroyed the marriage, whether she admits it or not. Brother, facts are facts. Ray should write a book for the betrayed, damn it. During Kathy's work vacation, I had the perfect opportunity to move out completely. I gathered everything valuable that belonged to me, including clothes, laptops, and equipment, but I didn't take any shared goods or furniture. Before I left a note on the kitchen table that said, I hope it was worth it. I placed my wedding ring on top of the note. As I walked away, I felt as if a huge weight had been lifted off my shoulders. The pain would take time to heal, and there would be baggage to deal with, but I had begun. I needed time to myself and to quickly and quietly get rid of her. The fact that I hadn't challenged her or coerced a confession didn't make me proud. I hadn't screamed or shouted. She didn't deserve it, in my opinion. She disregarded everything we owned, including our plans for the future, our aspirations, for I hadn't made any plans or contacted a lawyer. All I wanted was a fresh start and some clarity. When I arrived inside my trailer, the fresh air from the mountains was exactly what I needed. The following week, I resumed running, and it felt great to be alive. Kathy texted stuff like, we just landed, we're having a team dinner, and so on while she was gone. Where are you? Was the inquiry in a few emails. Why haven't you gotten back to me? I did not respond. When she got home, my phone exploded with calls and texts, and her mother tried to call me after the first day, but I didn't answer. She didn't try to contact my father because we're not close, and he's the only member of my family I still have. After being ignored for a week, her messages became more frantic. What is this? She texted. We must speak. I'm not sure what you believe you know, but nothing is happening. There isn't an affair going on. She finally texted me after a week of not responding, saying, I'm sorry things got out of hand. It didn't matter that I was connected with someone at work. You were frequently away while I was concerned with my work. I simply made a mistake and meant to end it. An error? I had been waiting for this confession all along, but strangely it only made me despise her more. Why was she unable to be truthful? I had no dreams of a future with this woman. Errors don't last for 6, 8, or a year. I refused to respond to her, even after she stopped bothering me for a few weeks, since I didn't want her to find out where I lived or pry about in my life, and I didn't want her to ruin my haven. She then began sending horrible texts like, you're a coward, one day. You refuse to speak to me. You have no regard for us. Come home, please, so that we can discuss. You're where, I can visit you. Paul, Please let's talk and make things right. Damn it. Although I don't recall all of the texts, they all seem to be excuses with little genuine regret, so I let them go in one ear and out the other. After a while, I changed my phone number. Update 1, Kathy sent me an email informing me that she had hired a lawyer and was going to file for divorce, and I just said, okay, that sounds good. This resulted in a barrage of emails requesting that I visit her and other things, and she wrote that she would stop bothering me if I agreed to an uncontested divorce after realizing that this would not work. After I agreed, I was truly free a few months later, and when I moved out of our apartment, I never had to see her again. She appeared to care more about it than I did, even though neither of us had any closure. I'd think of her every now and then for a few months, and the pain would suddenly hit me, like when I heard a song we used to like, but after a while, I simply stopped thinking about her. Update 2. Despite being a few years younger than me, she is fantastic and quite adorable, and she refers to me as her mountain man, and adores my way of life. Things are going great now that I'm officially divorced. In fact, I met a wonderful girl while running on the trail just down the hill from my house. Although I'm not in a hurry to commit, I also don't want to give up on women completely. I have no plans to leave the trailer anytime soon. I enjoy living outside and have simplified my life, which has made everything simpler for me, including my grief and my ex-wife. I am aware that everyone reacts to these situations in a unique way. I was fortunate to be in my 3rd year of marriage and not yet a parent, and I believe I acted in my own best interests. You don't have to spend your entire life with someone who cheats. If you experience something similar, try not to think about it too much. Continue living your life. As you improve yourself, it will get better. I wish everyone the best possible life. I've updated this about 5 times to make it more readable, and I just wanted to give you an update on my ex-wife's condition. As I mentioned in my previous post, I was concerned that my ex-wife was attempting to locate me. I had left our previous residence, which was about 2 hours away, and I ran into her last weekend at a coffee shop I frequented in a nearby town. It didn't seem like a coincidence to me, and I was able to flee before she noticed. Update 3. I drove into town this past weekend to grab groceries and made a stop at my usual coffee shop. I was using their free internet to work on some paperwork for work, which I finished and walked out of. I was on my way to my pickup when I heard someone call out, "Paul." When I turned to look across the street, I noticed Kathy waving at me. Finally, Armageddon arrived. She raced across the street toward me, and I stood there in shock. As if expecting an embrace, she walked over and extended her hand, but I stopped her in her tracks by reflexively extending out my arms with my palms up. She appeared to be in tremendous pain. Then she said, "I've been looking for you, Paul. I've wanted to see you since I learned you moved here. Could we have a conversation?" Guys, I felt like an animal locked in a cage. Yes, I did. "All right, let's find a table or something and we can talk for a minute," I eventually conceded. When she asked if we could come to my house, I said no. At the end of the block, she brought me to a bench outside a little business. She began by commenting on how much I had changed and how much she admired my new appearance, beard, and fitness level. She exclaimed at how much my body had transformed. She was wearing a tank top, little white shorts, and her hair in a ponytail, just like I used to like. I had my radar set to high. She was plainly trying to activate the sex appeal. I needed to restrain myself so I could see where this was going. She started by claiming she was sorry for the affair. She said that after I left, karma had a significant impact on her. When her boss learned about the affair, the situation grew so tense that she resigned. Her affair partner, AP, who was at the time engaged, was chastised and transferred to a different area within the organization. She responded by telling his fiancé the truth after he blamed her for everything, causing the couple to split up. This is when she bowed her head and started to cry. I didn't say anything. I simply sat there and gazed around. She stood up straight and gazed at me for a long time. "What do you want from me?" I inquired. She told me that she did not intend to have an affair. She claimed that the company's politics and posture pulled her in, and that her AP used his charm and authority to coerce her. She admitted that she thought she was exploiting him in the same way that he exploited her. After I accused her of cheating, she indicated that she planned to come clean. She drank after work to alleviate the guilt she felt at the time since she despised herself. She claimed she felt dumb, alone, and as if her heart had burst with loss right after I left. She discontinued her friendship with her AP immediately. She believed she needed to find me to see if there was any hope of reconciliation because I refused to communicate with her or contact her. She desired a fresh start. Despite the fact that she was aware of our divorce, she thought we might start over. I merely looked at her. I then handed it to her. You have no right to come out here and undo all the harm you have done. Do you think I'll overlook everything you did to destroy our union? As I previously stated, we were done if you cheated. Forgiveness does not exist. This relationship will not be restarted. You murdered it. As soon as you left me, you ruined everything we had. How foolish do you believe me to be? One evening, I saw you enter a hotel with him. Were you aware of this? I saw that my voice was becoming more audible, so I pushed her away after she grabbed my arm and began crying on my shoulder. I deserve all this, she replied, glancing up at me. I am certain that I do. If nothing else, would you allow me to take you out to dinner? I'd rather not go. I would like to speak further. I want to make sure that we are transparent about everything. You need to spend more time with me than you have in the past. Paul, please. I love you so much, even though I know you might not want to hear it. I had no idea how much I loved you before you left me. She began to sob violently and hyperventilate, so I took her up and hugged her, which seemed like the only way to calm her down. I realized then that I had crushed her heart as much as she had shattered mine. Walking, we found a nice location to continue our talk, and I said, "How did you discover me?" Once she had calmed down. "Have you hired a private investigator?" Kathy compelled Stacy to share all of the information after she asked how things were going when they ran into each other a few weeks before. Stacy didn't indicate that she had noticed me, so she responded with a tiny laugh. I had warned Stacy not to tell her, so she was hesitant, but Kathy persisted. Stacy eventually gave in, but all she knew was that I lived nearby and was in town. On her days off, she began to come here to check on me. I kind of laughed when she said that, thinking, damn, Stacy can't keep her trap shut. She blushed. We eventually decided to have dinner at a charming little spot with a patio. I made sure we didn't drink anything because I didn't want to give her a reason to be kind to me or say she wasn't so inebriated that she couldn't drive back. We had a good conversation, and I then escorted her to her vehicle. She insisted that she hadn't dated anyone else since I left, and she vowed fervently that I was the only person she wanted, so she pushed me hard to stay longer. No, it's still way too early for me to go down that road, I told her. My response to her request for my phone number was, "You'll just blow it up with texts and calls." She wept over it, but in the end, she agreed with my decision and promised to send me an email with information on returning to town the following weekend before she left. I questioned her bluntly. "Would you have forgiven me if I had been the cheater?" Before she got in her automobile. "Yes, in time, but only if we saw a marriage counselor and worked through the healing process with lots of talking, maybe even a binding agreement," she said, pausing to think. "Okay, maybe I can accomplish that," I replied, "in 5 or 10 years. I would wait if that's what it would take," she said. She then took both of my hands in hers, looked me in the eye and added, "God damn it, Paul, I will always love you and will do anything to prove it." This comment threw me off guard. Even though I felt better about the situation, I couldn't see her as a friend at the time, and her words continued to irritate me even after she departed. I returned home, went for a long run, drank some beer, and reflected on how far I had come. Could someone please assure me that she would not destroy the peace I had created for myself? I had the luxury of time to sort through it and gain perspective, but it was all still too vivid in my mind. Last updated. Most likely, this will be my final update. When I first posted my tale on Reddit, the moderators kept taking it down. In summary, I ghosted my ex-wife for nearly a year before she discovered me. She wanted to make amends and restart our relationship. You will be very disappointed if you expected me to be the typical beta blue pill fool, and forgive her. In a lengthy email she sent me last week, she conveyed her love and regret for the affair, and she offered to come out and stay with me for the weekend again. My response was to quiet her. I informed her that I had no plans to make amends with her. I'm very content living alone, taking advantage of my secluded situation, and keeping things simple. At 32, I'm not in a hurry to make changes. I have my own self-determination plan and have enjoyed the company of a few women and friends. I made it clear in my email response that I had no intention of reconciling and declined to provide her with my phone number. I no longer know or trust you because you made your bed. I wish you the best, and perhaps we will become friends in the future, but not right now. She was angered by my evasiveness and answered in a telling way, acknowledging that she had accepted a job offer from another state. Her genuine desire had been for me to accompany her, assuming that my remote work would make the move easier. She wished we could start over somewhere fresh. She wanted to come see me in person to try to persuade me because she was running out of time before moving. Fortunately for me, her time was up because I had a week of business travel planned. I am grateful. I will no longer have her in my life. She will quickly realize that her time with me is gone, but I expect to receive a few more emails. She will need to find someone else, and she may even cheat on them. To everybody reading this, make the most of your life, let go of the past, and find the strength to move forward. Best wishes to everyone.